Hello everybody, Happy New Year. Hope your 2020 is off to a really good start. Ours certainly is. It's time to look back on the year in film, 2019. Overall, I thought this year was okay, I guess. I don't think it was much better or worse than last year, to be honest. I've tallied up the best, worst and mediocre films I've seen. There was 30 best films, 25 worst and 45 mediocre, so honestly, it's not much different from last year. In terms of the films I have seen, in 2017 when I first did this list, I'd seen 94 films, which was more than I'd ever seen before. In 2018 it was 107, so up again. This year it was 101. I'm actually surprised I even got that many because over the summer I changed cities and subsequently changed jobs, and I have a much busier schedule this time, so it doesn't leave as much time for watching films, but I still managed to see 101, which was a lot more than I have in previous years. So the usual rules apply. The movie had to have come out in UK cinemas in 2019 and I had to have seen it in 2019. Also eligible movies from Netflix, Amazon Video, any sort of on-demand streaming service. Before I get onto the actual lists themselves, I want to do something I've never done before. I want to give out like a little booby prize, which is for most disappointing film of the year. A couple of months ago, Rach and I watched a film called Yesterday. It was Danny Boyle directed it, and it was written by Richard Curtis, who did Blackadder, Four Weddings and a Funeral, Notting Hill, those kind of films. And it had a fantastic premise. That's what really interested me. It's about a guy, he's an amateur musician, who has an accident, and there's like a blackout all over the world, and he wakes up in a world where he's the only person who knows who the Beatles are, and no one else knows who they are. And so, like I say, he's an amateur musician, he's not really successful, he plays little pubs and clubs, things like that. And so what he does is he uses the fact that the Beatles never existed, and by extension bands like Oasis, who were influenced by the Beatles, and he uses their songs to become famous, and everyone loves him because, well, the Beatles were revolutionary, and so he is too. I thought it was going to be a fantastic movie about artistry and about plagiarism, about musical integrity and doing what you love and things like that. But the problem is the movie completely falls apart largely because of its writer. Richard Curtis was. I love Richard Curtis. He was one of the co-writers of Blackadder, and I'll always love him for that because Blackadder is probably my favourite sitcom of all time. The problem is he was completely the wrong kind of person to write this because, like I said, he's also written movies like Four Weddings and a Funeral, Notting Hill, About Time, things like that. And what he does is he takes this movie, which should be like a really interesting journey into, the psyche of a musician, and he just turns it into another one of those rom-coms. And the guy spends most of the movie basically pining for this girl who I think is his manager, and so he just spends the whole movie obsessing over that. And so the third act is like, when you watch a rom-com, you have the whole third act breakup, and it's really turgid and slow and boring. That's what happens in the third act. So the movie should have done a lot more than it did, but it just ended up being another kind of middle-of-the-road rom-com, largely because of Richard Curtis's writing, and also because Danny Boyle, who's nowhere near as dynamic as he usually is behind the camera. So we got just a big letdown. So that was my most disappointing film of the year. So just like I did last year, I've got a list of films here which I seen and were big high-profile movies, but for one reason or the other aren't making either list. So the films are Captain Marvel, Dumbo, Aladdin, X-Men Dark Phoenix, Midsummer, John Wick 3, It Chapter 2, Spider-Man Far From Home, Terminator Dark Fate, Charlie's Angels, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Hustlers, and Jumanji: The Next Level. Quite a few of them, films like Midsummer and Terminator Dark Fate and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, they were all on the best of at one point, but they were kind of low on the list and just ended up getting pushed off. I liked Terminator Dark Fate a lot more than a lot of people did. I'm a big Terminator fan. I actually thought that was the best Terminator film in quite a few years, but yeah, a lot of people didn't like it, but it was on the list, but it's not anymore. Okay, before we get onto the actual list, as usual, I've got a few dishonorable mentions, beginning with Rim of the World. So Rim of the World is a film which combines basically both elements of sci-fi and horror and manages to do them both pretty badly. It's directed by a guy called McGee, who I think sounds more like a clothing brand than it does a movie director. He's directed a lot of films. He's directed Charlie's Angels, Full Throttle, This Means War, and he did Terminator Salvation, which for me was one of the worst films of 2009. It's a movie about an alien invasion, and it centers on a group of kids. It's got really annoying characters. The aliens are totally lame. Like, there's a huge alien invasion of Earth, like I said, but through their entire journey, the kids only meet about 4 aliens the entire time. The film has these inexplicable jumps where it gets to the end of a scene and suddenly it jumps and they're somewhere else. Like, there's no explanation how they get from one place to another, and the whole thing together, it just feels like a soulless video game. That's it, just like a soulless alien shoot 'em up. It's really lame. The comedy's excruciatingly bad. Like, there's so many stupid one-liners that just don't make any sense and just aren't funny. And yeah, it's just a really lame film. Someone Great. So Someone Great is a movie about 3 female leads. I think the premise is that one of them's just been through a breakup and her friends are trying to make her feel better. I can't really remember. Honestly, a running theme with movies this year is a lot of them were just really forgettable, because when I go back to do this list, I go back and look through my notes and write down some things to say, and a lot of the time it's just forgettable. The word forgettable or unnecessary just kept coming up. So yeah, Someone Great has these three leads who are really irritating. You know those people, when you have a party and these a group of people turn up and you hate them and you just want them to leave, but they just stay around. That's what they're like. It's the dialogue. A lot of the dialogue feels very, very improvised. It feels very free flowing, but no one had the courage to tell them that what they were saying wasn't funny. So it's just long, seemingly ad-libbed conversations which aren't very funny at all. The plot goes absolutely nowhere. It's really, really rambling. It's really annoying, and I just don't get what the point of it is. Velvet Buzzsaw. So just like I said about Someone Great, Velvet Buzzsaw was just a really forgettable film. Again, I looked through my worst of list and oh, Velvet Buzzsaw, what happened again? All I really remember is Jake Gyllenhaal's in it. Jake Gyllenhaal's a fantastic actor. I love Jake Gyllenhaal. He's very versatile. He's given a lot of great performances. Here he plays a snooty art critic who in movies are always portrayed as total douchebags. But he was actually quite funny in it. It's a movie, as I remember, about art coming to life and killing people, something like that, but it was really overlong, it was really pretentious, and like I say, I barely remember anything about it. The Silence. The Silence, aka Discount A Quiet Place, had pretty much the same premise as that movie. It was based on a book which actually came up before Quiet Place, but I think Quiet Place did that premise of sound being dangerous just so well that I don't even know why we needed this movie. It's stars Stanley Tucci, and he has a group of friends, family members, whatever, and they're traveling through America, and they make any sound, creatures instantly attack them. One problem is how inconsistent it is. Sometimes somebody will make a noise, nothing happens, and other times the noise is made and they die. Also, I didn't get the fact that in A Quiet Place, the family are holed up in this house, which they've designed to be as quiet as possible, which makes sense. In this movie, rather than doing that, they spend a lot of time trekking across America, making lots of noise, and they lose a lot of people as a result. So it's kind of their own fault, really. Nothing I can really say anything else. It's another post-apocalyptic movie that shows that even in situations like that, humans will still find reasons to be stupid, selfish, and just really annoying. Ugly Dolls. If you go on the Ugly Dolls IMDb page, on the trivia section there's an entry which says Ugly Dolls has a plot which is similar to Trolls, and I'm like, well, yeah. If The Silence was a discount at A Quiet Place, this is a discount Trolls. It's just another really, really lame kids movie. Bright colours and everything to distract you from the fact that the story is lame, the characters are really annoying, and there's nothing here that hasn't been done better anywhere else. You're better off just go and watch something like Inside Out, go watch Toy Story, go watch Ratatouille, go watch any other animated movie. It'll be a lot better than this. The lead's motivation makes no sense. The idea is you've got this world where you have the attractive dolls in one place and the ugly dolls in another place, and the ugly doll dreams about being happy and being loved by everybody, but she already is at the start. She's already loved by everybody in her town. So it's got the whole idea is it's a message about being superficial, which is, that's always a good message, but it's been done many times before. It's not funny. It feels too long, even though it's not, and the songs just pad the runtime. So I didn't like Trolls very much, but it was still way, way better than this. Okay, now that we've got the dishonourable mentions out of the way, it's time to get onto the actual list, beginning with Serenity. So believe it or not, Serenity is actually the only, I guess what you could call, original movie on this list, basically because it's the only one that's not a remake or a sequel. But that still doesn't earn it any points. The film itself is a big misfire. I don't know what the hell they were going for. It's got Matthew McConaughey and Anne Hathaway in it, both very, very talented performers. So honestly, I chalk this movie up more to bad directing than anything else, and bad writing. It's a really confused movie that tries to do a lot, but ends up really doing nothing. I mean, it looks great. The cinematography and everything is excellent, but spoilers here. It turns out this entire movie takes place in a fishing simulator, and I can't say that without laughing. The whole thing is a kid playing a video game, a fishing video game, and the whole thing is just as ridiculous as it sounds. It wastes a lot of good actors. It wastes some interesting scenarios, and yeah, all in all, that's just what Serenity is. It's just a waste. The Hustle. So The Hustle is a remake of Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, the film with Steve Martin and Michael Caine playing two con artists on the Riviera. I really like that film. Turns out that's a remake of another one, but Dirty Rotten Scoundrels is the only one I've seen. And I really like that film, and The Hustle is like a gender swap remake of that. And it's nowhere near as funny, it's nowhere near as clever, and it's nowhere near as well performed. It's a difficult movie to sit through. Bad comedies are among the hardest films to sit through, and this was pretty difficult. It's full of what feels like semi-improvised dialogue from Rebel Wilson and Anne Hathaway. The problem is, I get the feeling that they were told to improvise, but they just went on too long. There's a scene where Rebel Wilson's in this prison cell, and she's trying to convince this woman to let her out, and it looks like she's allowed to ad-lib a bunch of jokes, and it's just painful. You can tell that the director just said, just do whatever. And it just went on and on. There's another one where she has to dress up in like an old Queen's outfit and pretend that she's, I think, like mentally ill or childish. That goes on way too long as well, and that's just what this movie is. Everything goes on too long. And if you've seen Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, you know what the twist ending is. So if you've seen that movie, there's no point watching this one. I feel bad for the performers in it because they've been really, really good in other things, but this is it's just a comic misfire. It just shouldn't have happened. Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. I really, really enjoyed The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. The Last Jedi got a lot of flack, but I liked it. Rachel and me really enjoyed it because it tried to do things differently and it wasn't just like kind of following a formula. Star Wars Episode 9 feels like it's going back to that formula. The whole film feels like J.J. Abrams, who I really respect, but it feels like he's just pandering to the fans who hated the last film. It's like these fans didn't like that, so we have to make them happy. So this whole movie, it just feels like overt fan service. The way this movie is put together, it was summed up best by Rachel. I can't think of any better way to say it. That the movie feels like it was written by a 13-year-old for a school assignment by someone who's never seen Star Wars in their life, but has been told about it by friends or just seen it read about it online somewhere. Like they had a vague idea of what Star Wars was and they thought, well, let's just throw all the best ingredients in. The plot is ridiculously confusing. It's got a lot of insufferable twists. There was one twist in the movie, I won't give away which one it was, but Rachel and me just looked at each other, when you just exchange one of those what the hell looks, and I just said, that's ridiculous, and it is. Most of the plot is just this stupid treasure hunt. And also, there was a big issue in the last movie. Kelly Marie Tran, who plays Rose in The Last Jedi in this film, she got a lot of bullying from basically racist idiots because of a role in the last film. She's barely in this one, which is weird because at the end of Last Jedi, when she crashed into Finn's ship, I would swear she had died, but Rachel was like, no, she's alive, she's in this film, and she was barely in it. So I thought, first of all, it seems weird that they actually had her character come back, considering she's barely in it. Also, that feels like pandering. Like J.J. Abrams was, he was worried that fans would hate on her in this, like they did in the last one. So they decided not to put her in. So he's just catered to the worst of the Star Wars fan base, and that's what this movie is. It's among the worst Star Wars film I've ever seen. It ends on a really bum note, which is a shame because this was a really good trilogy. I really liked Force Awakens and Last Jedi, but it's ending out on a really sour note. And if Rachel had been doing one of these lists, she's told me this would be her number one worst. The Lion King. I've had very, very mixed feelings about the whole Disney live action remake thing. Like I say, I've seen Aladdin and Dumbo. They weren't great movies, but they weren't terrible. They took the original premise and at least tried to do something with it. The Lion King, this Lion King live action remake is among the most redundant remakes I've ever seen. In a lot of places, it's pretty much beat for beat the same. A lot of lines of dialogue are the same. I just don't understand why this movie needed to happen. The original Lion King is one of the best movies Disney ever made. It had great characters, it had fantastic songs, it was a great update of Hamlet, and it had this real sense of grandeur. This movie doesn't have any of those, really. It's got a few good scenes, a few decent moments, but it's half an hour longer than the original, for no good reason, other than just to make it longer. The songs are terrible. Like I say, in the first movie, if you watched Anne and me's review on this, you'll know how we feel about the songs, but in the original, again, like I said, there was this grandeur to it. Remember, I Just Can't Wait to Be King, with that giant pyramid of animals? In this, they're just walking along a path, singing the song. Be Prepared is the same. You had Scar going up on that giant platform. On this, he just climbs up a rock and just kind of speaks the lyrics. So the movie's just really, really half-assed in all departments. And its redundancy is what annoyed me the most, the fact that they didn't try and do anything different. Anything they did different just distracted. Like, I didn't like Timon and Pumbaa in this. They were really annoying. I like Seth Rogen, but it was just really annoying. The jokes dragged on. There was some really stupid ones, like the hyenas who were going on about personal space, which was pointless and went nowhere. I just don't understand why this needed to be made. It made loads of money, which is really, really sad. They're just going to keep making more. I'm actually looking forward to seeing Mulan, though. I think that could be interesting. But for me, The Lion King so far is Disney's worst live-action remake. Men in Black International. Okay, so I love Men in Black, the original Men in Black with Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith. I think everybody does. It had a lot of charm to it. Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones were perfectly cast. It was funny. It was interesting. It had, some good things to say about our society. And now there's Men in Black International. Like Lion King, I don't know why this movie needed to be made. It doesn't improve on the other Men in Blacks in any way. I love Chris Hemsworth and Tessa Thompson. I think they're both great, but they have no chemistry here at all. They're both just flailing. That's what this movie is. It's just characters flailing. Kamil Nanjiani, I think that's how you say his name. He plays this little alien troll who stands on your shoulder. He gets a lot of terrible lines. I think he's supposed to be the comic relief, but I don't know why a comedy needs a comic relief, but he's not funny in it. The plot is absurd. It does this annoying thing where they'll just jump from, like in Rim of the World, they'll just jump from one scenario to another with no explanation whatsoever. It's a waste of some really good talent, and no, I can't think of anything else to say about it, honestly. I just hated this film. It's one of those movies that's so bad it annoys you. It annoyed me how stupid it was. I spent most of the time eye-rolling. It got a giggle now and then, but most of the time I was just irritated. Child's Play. I think it's safe to say that there's no genre of movie that loves sequels and reboots and remakes and such more than horror. So that's why we have another Child's Play movie. I really could just end it there because there's nothing else I really need to say. But yeah, I mean, the original Child's Play, it wasn't a great film or anything, but at least it was kind of silly fun. This is just silly but without the fun. It's absolutely nonsensical. The lead character, the lead boy, is one of the stupidest characters in movie history. Like, it's so stupid, it's just grating. At one point, again, spoilers, at one point, Chucky the doll kills this kid's cat, and the kid knows that he did it. So what would you do if your doll killed your cat? You'd get rid of it. But no, he keeps it in his room while he sleeps. And it even slashes his arm. It kills his cat, slashes his arm, and he just keeps the doll in the room with him. And the whole idea is this kid's lonely, that's why he keeps the doll. But at this point in the movie, he's made human friends, so he doesn't need the doll anymore. But no, he keeps this murderous doll about. It's full of humans who aren't able to subdue a doll, which never made any sense to me. How Chucky becomes the killer doll is really bad in this one. I mean, it wasn't great in the original, but at least you could say magic. In this, I don't know, it was computers or something, but it was really, really stupid. The last 10 minutes, first of all, it pretty much rules out any notion of a sequel, and then blatantly foreshadows one. And this film made money. It made a lot of money, so we're almost certainly going to get another one, but if they make any of these more of these, I'm not going to be going to see them.
What Men Want.
So this is the second gender swap remake on this list, and the worst. It was a lot more annoying than The Hustle was. Tracy Morgan's in this film, and I've never liked Tracy Morgan at all. That sort of rambling motormouth shtick he does is just really annoying. Again, it's one of those films that feels like it was largely improvised, like the director just said, just go ahead. And so there's long scenes that just go on, and it's just so rambling and so unfunny. It just drags the movie out. It doesn't really make a difference that they swap the gender. It's still the same silly film about a person who can hear people's thoughts. But this one's really inconsistent. Taraji P. Henson, who plays the lead, who can hear men's thoughts, there'll be a moment where she'll be in a room alone with a guy and she can hear his thoughts, but there's another moment where she's walking through like a courtyard, there's dudes everywhere, and she can't hear anything. So, yeah, it's really, really inconsistent. The whole idea is she's going for this promotion, but her character's just terrible. She's a really, really irritating character. So I was honestly vying against her in this movie because I just couldn't stand her. The first 2/3 are just annoying, in-your-face comedy shtick, and the last third is just really predictable Hollywood schmaltz. It got to a point, it was like I Feel Pretty last year. It got to a point where we were just calling every single plot beat, everything that was going to happen. Like, oh, now this is going to happen. Oh, now this is going to happen, and it did. So it's frustratingly stupid, frustratingly unfunny, and frustratingly predictable.
Annabelle Comes Home.
Funnily enough, my top 3 worst movies this year are all horror films. It was just a really bad year for horror. The first one, number 3, Annabelle Comes Home. It really just epitomizes how bad horror films are. Actually, all of the 3 movies in the top really do, but like I said last year, I got into the Conjuring universe. I really like the Conjuring films, but then the Annabelle spin-offs have not been as good. The best one was Annabelle Creation, so the prequel was actually the best movie. Annabelle Comes Home is about an hour and 40 minutes of people walking around a dark house with slamming doors, with flickering lights, with a doll that pops out of nowhere that moves around on its own, and it's just a waste of time. I don't know why we need more Annabelle movies. Honestly, all the demonic possession and stuff that happens in this movie, the worst injury that happens in this film is someone gets a scuffed knee. That's the worst that happens in this film. I don't know why movies create these demons that have such severe limitations that I don't know why we're supposed to be afraid of them. So Annabelle, she can be a frightening presence sometimes. I mean, she looks terrifying, but yeah, it's just more dumb teenagers getting themselves in dumb trouble with a dumb doll.
Pet Sematary.
I haven't seen the original Pet Sematary book from however many decades ago, and I haven't read the Stephen King novel. So going into Pet Sematary, I was really unprepared. I had no idea what was going to happen. But just like Annabelle Comes Home, it's the same bunch of jump scares, crashing doors, flickering lights, nonsensical, magical stuff happening. Also, the whole premise is the lead character, his son dies in an accident, and he buries him in this cemetery, which brings animals back to life. But the problem with this movie is it really doesn't go any way to justify what he's doing. I mean, obviously he's grief-stricken, but the movie really doesn't explore how he feels about it. It's just, son dies, I guess I'll just bring him back to life, and he doesn't think about any of the consequences. And then, like I said, the movie just descends into stupid jump scares, animals, like there's a back-to-life cat in this movie that just keeps jumping out of nowhere, as cats do. But that's all that really happens in the film. At one point, this was my number 1. It kind of jostled for the number 1 position. I'm kind of going back and forth, but I've put it at number 2 because at least the acting was pretty good in this film. But overall, Pet Sematary is just another bad horror film.
And at number 1, The Curse of La Llorona.
So yeah, for me, the worst movie of the year, The Curse of La Llorona. I kept saying it wrong, but after talking about Annabelle Comes Home and Pet Sematary, I can't think of anything else to say. This is just another movie, jump scares, flickering lights, people wandering about in the dark yelling hello, things jumping out and you think it's a demon, but no, it's just a child or it's just an animal. It's just copy and paste shit. I don't know why. I get the feeling that people who make these movies don't actually read reviews of horror movies, because if they would, they wouldn't keep making the same films over and over again. But Linda Cardellini, she's a really good actress. but she's wasted here. The whole idea of the movie is it's about this demon who lost her children hundreds of years ago, so she's out on a mission to kill children. Okay, as a demon, you wouldn't think that would be too hard, but it is. Again, these movies are frustrating because they have trouble explaining what the demon's limitations are. There's a scene where Lolorana, the ghost demon, whatever, jumps out and grabs hold of a girl's arm, and it burns the girl's arm, and then she disappears. I'm like, if your plan is to kill this child, if you can jump out and burn them, why not jump out and kill them? But that's all that happens. The demon will pop up, it'll do something scary, and then it'll vanish. And demons walk around slowly like they're Michael Myers. I don't know, you're a demon, you can't go through a wall, you can't fly. Again, it was probably the most frustrating movie of the year to watch, because after every single jump scare I just thought, why can't this movie just be over? Why can't the demon just do what it set out to do? I mean, if your demon is that lame, I don't know why we're supposed to be scared. I don't know why we're supposed to enjoy films like this that constantly pull this trick. I don't understand, but anyway, so Curse of La Llorona, my worst film of the year. It could have been Pet Sematary, might even have been Annabelle Come Home, but yeah, that's the movie I've decided to put at the top of the list. So yeah, mostly another year of mostly bad sequel, prequel, remakes, whatever. But for me, I'd say Curse of La Llorona was the worst of the bunch.